Hey everyone. Okay, so day 2 of the hashtag 12 days of Yule that Ivy the Occultist started. So this is showing off our witchy spaces. So first I'm going to do a big outer kind of space look, and then we'll go into each of the different pieces and stuff. So my primary indoor space is a very small section of a mudroom. So this was a mudroom. You've got the 2 doors that enter into the house that way. And then we've got the large sliding glass door that gives me all of the view of outside. So this is my indoor space. This is primarily where I do all my witchy work. As you can see there, I was doing the other video, the day 1 video earlier. And so I still have my setup of where I do readings. So we'll start here. This is what I bring out when I do readings. I have this really nice, neat little cloth that I put down. And that piece there is actually a really large trunk. And my husband put it onto a set of wheels so I could move it around and stuff a bit. And I store all my journals, the ones that are filled. I have some books in there, things like that. That gets stored all into the trunk. And then you'll see this weird little lump here that keeps moving. That's my dog. I have a little dash hound. And the reason that I have to have this long sofa seat is because she has to be in here. She constantly has to be in here when I'm in here. She has to be next to me when I'm working. So yeah, it's a whole thing. So we'll just go around and I'm going to show you different pieces. So we're going to start over here. This here is my staff. And it is a spirit staff. It's something very particular. Those that are inside my Death's Emissary course, they are doing a very similar staff. It's for spirit work, spirit walking. And it has some other purposes as well. And of course, I have some stuff. This wall here is kind of blank. I just took out a big bookshelf that was here and I moved all the stuff into a different bookshelf behind me. And I'm going to do some type of art piece. I just don't know what yet. I don't know what that looks like. These are a new addition. All of these little hangies. So they're on both sides. And there are these moon and star hangs. And I just absolutely love them. They're supposed to be for like photo decoration and that kind of stuff. But they really brought that space out for me and added some of that feel of the stars, the heavens, the planets, especially since I'm getting a lot more into planetary type work in a different way, doing some different explorations with that. That's my little witchy hat, and underneath is another lamp type thing when I'm doing small work and just need a little bit of light and I don't want a ton. That's what I'm going to use. And we'll just start from one side to the other. So it's just a little wax burner for small good. I was burning something earlier, so it's a little bit messy, but that is my incense burner. It's a marble incense burner I just recently got. It's really nice. Over here, I've got this stack, and some of this is going to change when I do the next video, the craft part, because we're going to be doing a couple of things over here. This is a skull that I'm currently working on. It's still in its transition phase. I'm still working on its design and what it's going to ultimately end up being. But it's for spirit work. It's a spirit skull, and it's specifically going to be tied to my ancestors. These little guys back here are all planetary servitors. So I work a lot in servitors. And these guys are each individually connected to a planet and a color of that planet from my personal workings. And when I do planetary work and I'm working with a very specific planetary energy or I'm bringing them in, I will pull the different ones, whichever ones I need, pull them out and bring them into the working. So my guide, my deity, loves roses, and it's wintertime. So getting fresh roses all the time is really hard. We live in a very, very small town. We live out in the country, so we're only close to small towns. Our nearest big town is about an hour away. So roses are hard. So I just got her this little silk arrangement, and this is what we're doing through the winter. My two little elephants here, they're part of what's moving. Elephant has been really huge, really, really huge for me lately. And it's part of this transmutation that I've gone through and the space that I'm entering. And I'll get more into that when we get into the spirits that we're working with, because I'm going to talk about the elephants and what they mean. But I love this artistic piece. These guys are done so fabulously and so many little details. Even in the little legs, you probably can't see it very well. There's all these minute details that are just fabulous. My little Irish blessings stone. Have a lot of Irish in my ancestry and my mother. This is my ancestral tree. A little representation. It's got some stones and stuff that hang off of it. And it really represents my ancestors. And then I've got nature back there. Representation of the spirits of nature. And then my Nissi. He actually was in with my other Nissies. I have a whole other Nissi altar that is just specifically for them in another room. But there were some problems. And so I figured he needed to be in here. I really feel like he wants to be next to the tree and do that kind of growth. So everybody kind of views Nissi a little bit different. I know the lore behind them when they started interacting with people, but there was also lore before they started interacting with people, before they really became more hearth and home. I have found in my interactions, they were very much the tenders of the roots of trees. So underneath the trees and tending the roots of the trees grew. It's kind of like a symbiotic relationship with them in the spirit of the tree. And so that's really how my Nissi interact in my practice and within our property here. I've got my tiny little raven down there. Ravens have been part of my practice for a really long time. The owl. I've got another skull back here. And I know some people are going to be like, you didn't like skulls. I wasn't really a proponent of skulls. It wasn't just my decor or anything. It's not that I had anything against them. It just wasn't big for me. That has really changed in the last year. I've really embraced the skulls on a whole other format. And this one I just absolutely loved. It's got all these tiny intricate details to it. It's just really beautiful. And for me, I am a death worker. And it's interesting because everybody's like, oh, you deal in death. It's so depressing and sad. And no, the more that I deal in death, the more life I find. The more living I seem to do. So I got into that in a couple of articles, and I'm sure I'll get more into that on the channel about that living in death, because it's not just death. We'll get there. So that's a little prayer candle piece that I've got a spell thing going with, and we're not talking about that. It's my Santa Muerte deck. Again, a couple more elephants. I've got my mala there, some oils in the back, a glass box with some things that we're not talking about. On the top shelf, so this here is my pendulum. It's a key, and I use it for my pendulum. It works fantastic. I love it. This is my Moldavite. I've had my Moldavite for a really long time. It's a really great piece to work with when I need to do some transforming, but it's also a piece that connects me to all the elements. So when I'm doing full elemental work, I really like to wear that as well. The skulls that I have up here, I have got one from a catfish, so representation of water, but it also has healing properties in that water. A deer skull. Deer are very sacred to me, and my first given name by my deity was after a deer. So the Blackfoot deer. Except for that's not the actual full name, but it's the English version of it. And then this is my pride and joy. It is a turkey vulture skull. This was from a very young turkey vulture. We have them all over our property. They spend all fall, winter, and early spring with us until they go to have babies, because they have babies on cliffs. And the only cliffs here are back in a ravine, which is where I found this skull. And they stopped having babies back there because people started developing some land around us on a different hill. And all the coyotes moved this way. And they moved into the ravine because there's not a lot of space for them. So it's not a safe place for them to have their babies anymore, obviously. But turkey vulture, if you follow me for a while, you know, they are extremely sacred to me as an animal. And they have a lot of meaning and hold a lot of lessons for me. So on this side, it's really important for me to have representation of each of the elements of my altar. And it's not from a Wiccan perspective either. This is really the understanding, and maybe it is, I don't know, I'm not Wiccan. So, but I had a conversation recently with a friend, and her perspective from Wicca and elements just really was weird for me. But I have all of the elements represented on my altar of each one. So I do have candles and stuff that represent fire as well. But this is the standing. I have this really neat fire sculpture that I think is really cool. Back here, I have a cup, and it is full of cicada shells. Cicada, again, you know, I work in death and rebirth. It is the pattern that I am connected to and all my primary work, and cicada is another representation of that. My husband had this really neat old world kind of a globe, and so he allowed me to put it on my altar and gave it to me, and I just love it. It's just really ornate and just a really cool piece. This we're going to get into later, but it is my money and prosperity bowl. That is my little egg. I have had this egg for a really, really long time, since I started my journey. And it has a lot of representations, especially in the life, death, rebirth. Death and rebirth. My little candles. This is my little cauldron. It was really messed up, but my husband did a really great job bringing it back to its really nice black and glory. And then my water fountain. So this fountain, I needed something that represented water, but I needed flowing water. I have this really bad thing about sitting water because it feels stagnant. It's like air. If a place is stagnant air, I just feel like we're drowning in it. So I need movement. And that's really what this fountain brings. But the interesting thing, because of the ball on top and the way that it does, and it moves and rotates and with the light, makes a fantastic scrying space. I'm just saying, you can turn off all the lights and scry through that. Some incredible visions. I have my 2 tapestries. It's the light and the dark, the sun and the moon. And they have, and they both have what to me looks like a Luna moth, which is really, again, one of those big symbolisms for me. And then we have my deity. She is the core. of the death rebirth pattern, the closest that you can get and still have some type of avatar like guide and face and communication. I've talked about this before, but trying to communicate specifically with just a pattern, very, very difficult. It's even more difficult than just dealing with elementals, straight elementals. Language, understanding. That's why I think guides are important, because they are connected to that pattern and are able to be that voice for the pattern for us and show us the lessons and take us deeper. She is Mata Mortis, the mother of death. And the mother of death, the mother part, is really important because it brings in and shows the birth through death. The death isn't the ending. It is a transition. It's a transformation or a transmutation dependent on its form. So again, death worker stuff. That's what I'm into. This is a really cool driftwood piece that we found here on the property, and really encompasses the spirits of the land here. Right? Just an amazingly gorgeous piece. And here it looks like a little face. You've got two little eyes and a mouth. And this huge piece, there's so much in it. And there's even stones that are embedded into it. And it's like this huge crown on her. Gorgeous piece. Then I have my two little lanterns, one on each side. Decorative piece. These are runes that tell a story. These are specific Bind and Galder runes that are mine. This is representation of my snake, which gets into the death doula work stuff. The path of the Empress, that was the path that I was on before, and now we've moved from, but it's a good reminder. Mask of the Sisters, Sisters of the Well. Sedona, the aspect of the well, so where the gods dwell, where souls dwell, where my ancestors dwell. The well that the ancestral soul moves through after every death and before every rebirth. And then the spiral. So the spiral has all kinds of depth and meaning. We're not going to get into it here. So my little spirit board, this is a new one and I haven't found a new home for it yet. So it's just hanging out on my altar. So this is a combination of my altar and my ancestors' altar. I redid this statue again and created it into a me. So it is a representation of me on that altar. I have two servitors, one on each side. And my gargoyle servitor. And then I have my Orn. And both of these are set for very specific protections. They each have their individual job that they do. And it's very physical world stuff. And then I have my gargoyles. So I have two of those that sit at the entrance of my sacred temple, my sacred space. Each one, again, has their own very specific job and purpose. They are gatekeepers. If you take my Death Doula course, you'll understand that more. I'm sure I will talk more on gatekeepers as well, just for the simple fact that I think that understanding how to create and set gatekeepers when you constantly work in spirit realm and with spirits, both human and entity spirits, very, very important lessons. This part of the altar I'm not going to go into very much because it's going to change. Right now it was just kind of a hodgepodge setup for Yule, winter solstice, bringing that in. There's representation of the women of my family, especially from the Irish side and those connected with Morrigan. This is my bowl and knife. It's harder to see, but you'll see it later when I pull it out on another video. And then these are my Ozark women, four of my great grandmothers that I do a lot of work with and that have shown me a lot about ancestor work, ancestral souls, witchcraft in general. Fantastic guides. And then, This piece was from my mother. And so it has a lot of sentimental value. And I only get to bring it out every so often. So it's really excited about that. And then just a candle burning on it. Nothing specific. You will see a mirror here. And I know some people are like, mirror. Yeah. That mirror is specifically set like a window. I set it that way. And I use it in scrying. I also have visitors that like to occasionally pop in there. I am not going to go too deep into what's up here. Some of it's personal. There is another small mirror up there that I use specifically for ancestral work. Now, the space my altar is on is just an old TV cabinet. And so down here I have like a bunch of my artsy crafts things. I got a drawer full of them. Candles, crafting stuff. My journals that I am currently working on. Decks that I am currently using. And just some supplies that I need. So, yeah. That is my witchy space. In a nutshell. Have a great one. I'll see you tomorrow.